So I really dig elemental magic characters. You probably figured that out when I said I was excited for the Warrior of the Four Element Monk and the Circle of the Land Druid. And now we get to explore the Sorcerer, the Wizard, and the Warlock. I'm Brad Wolf, and welcome to Dired In. This is the fourth and final video in the series on the new Dungeons & Dragons. In this series, I covered a bunch of playtest material and what I think the final version of D&D is going to look like when it comes out later this year. So let's review a few things real quick before we get into our three mages. During the playtest, they experimented with doing away with class-specific spell lists, and they replaced them with three straightforward spell lists. An arcane list for wizards, sorcerers, and warlocks, a divine list for clerics and paladins, and a primal list for rangers and druids. So you may have heard of that already, but that did not survive the playtest. People felt like it robbed the wizard of its versatility by giving all the same spells to both warlock and sorcerer, and it appeared to just make rangers and paladins too powerful, especially with the idea of giving rangers and paladins cantrips. Jeremy Crawford also said they're working the world building concepts into the player classes. The idea of elemental, supernatural, extraplanar themes woven into each of the classes via the subclasses. So each class has four subclasses that create this four-pointed theme. And here are some examples. So with Druid, you have land versus sea and moon versus stars, which are very obvious natural themes, but also contain some supernatural elements. With the cleric, you have light versus trickery, revelation versus deception, and life versus war, healing versus harm. With paladin, you have ancients and devotion, which represent nature and civilization, and then glory and vengeance, which are kind of hero versus anti-hero. Monk, you have open hand versus four elements, the physical versus the elemental, and then mercy and shadow, which are the benevolent versus the sinister. Then bard has lore and dance, which is mind versus body, and valor and glamour, which is the warrior versus the trickster. Two very thematic character tropes. Then with Barbarian, you have the Berserker and the Zealot, which is fury versus devotion. And then Wild Heart and World Tree, the natural versus the supernatural. And you can see the breakdown of those classes in my previous videos. And Jeremy Crawford didn't actually explain it exactly like I did. I went into more detail and kind of took some liberty with those themes, but that was the idea, exploring the theme of the multiverse in the realm of Dungeons & Dragons. Now remember when 5th edition first came out and we all wanted to see Dark Sun and Eberron and Ravenloft and all these different settings. And we speculated for a long time that the reason Wizards of the Coast was not releasing all those different settings is because of competition. And that really was an issue with TSR back in 2nd edition. They created so many settings that their products were competing with each other, and that led to poor sales. But now we have those settings. We have Eberron and Spelljammer and Planescape and Ravenloft. We've got all these different settings, and Wizards of the Coast is handling it the best way they can to not create competition with themselves. And that's the idea of the multiverse. That all of these settings are part of a D&D multiverse, and the multiversal theme is going to run through the new version of the game. That's my impression of all the content I've absorbed so far. And we see that with the new adventure coming out about BECMI, which is going to travel across different settings in the D&D multiverse. But now, with all that theme out of the way, let's dig into our mages and see what they can do in the new edition. So let's take a look at our wizard. One thing we saw in the playtest were class-specific spells that actually functioned as class features. So these were spells that were built into the class design. That has gone away, and I'm kind of glad it did. So really the changes to Wizard just kind of patched some gaps that were being exploited by optimizers, kind of closing loopholes, if you will. The first one being the Savant ability has been replaced with the Scholar ability. Savant used to make it easier for you to copy spells into your spell book from whatever school you belong to, which would actually lead optimizers to not take the wizard school spells for their subclass and take other spells with their class feature choices, then find ways to copy their school-specific spells into their spellbook as a way to accumulate more spells in the most cost-effective way. So the new Scholar ability instead gives you expertise in either arcane, history, nature, or religion. Now at 5th level, the wizard does get a new feature called Memorize Spell. Studying your spellbook for 1 minute, you can expend mental and magical effort to memorize a spell. Choose one spell of level 1 or higher from your spellbook that you don't have prepared. You now have that spell prepared until you use this feature to prepare a different spell. This adds more versatility to the wizard because it gives you the opportunity to grab a situation-specific spell that you otherwise wouldn't prepare at the beginning of of the day. So for wizard subclasses, we get Diviner, Illusionist, Abjurer, and Evoker. So again, we see those polar themes of truth and deception, defense and offense. For the most part, there's not significant changes to these subclasses. However, so once again, sticking to the theme that they're kind of shoring up the wizard. They're sealing the cracks, they're closing the loopholes, making it harder to abuse the wizard's features. So for the Abjurer, Arcane Ward now requires a spell slot to use. This prevents it from being abused by a Warlock invocation or a species ability to cast spell. Optimizers used to use those features to spam Arcane Ward, and they can no longer do that in the new design. Likewise, Illusory Reality, the 17th level Illusionist ability, gets some fine-tuning as well. It specifically clarifies that it can't deal damage or cause a condition. So you can no longer use this to make fire that would deal damage, or to make the ceiling appear 2 feet off the ground, to force a character prone, or make a character restrained by having their wrists and ankles chained to the floor. The biggest change for the Evoker is switching Potent Cantrip and Sculpt Spells. Potent Cantrip allows you to do extra damage with your cantrips. Sculpt Spells allows you to choose which targets are unaffected by your area effect spells. And switching these just makes sense. I know I've seen a lot of people online refer to this as a nerf, but it absolutely isn't in my opinion. With this change, you'll be consistently getting extra damage in almost every combat, because at 3rd and 4th level, you're probably using your cantrips in almost every combat. You're not getting big area effect spells like Fireball or Cone of Cold until 5th level or later. This just makes sense from a utility standpoint. Give the ability that you're going to use most often at lower levels, and the ability you're going to use most often at higher levels at higher levels. So we're not getting any new wizard toys, but ultimately, the wizard was probably the best class in the game, and probably one of the most powerful classes, if not the most powerful class in the game. So it really makes sense that they just polished it up and they didn't really need to fix what was not broken. But speaking of fixing what is broken, let's talk about the Sorcerer. The best part about the new Sorcerer is you get far more prepared spells. You still get 2 at 1st level, but then it goes up to 4 at 2nd level and 6 at 3rd level, and continues increases all the way up to 22 at 20th level. That's a significant improvement over the 2014 prepared spells for the Sorcerer.
Thank you.
Since the Sorcerer no longer chooses their subclass at 1st level, they get the Innate Sorcery ability. So twice per long rest, you can use your Innate Sorcery ability for 1 minute. This allows you to increase the spell save DC for your Sorcerer spells by 1, or give yourself advantage on attack rolls for your Sorcerer spells. So now at 2nd level, when you get Font of Magic, converting your spell slots to sorcery points requires no action at all. You still need to use a bonus action to create spell slots from the sorcery points, but giving yourself more sorcery points from your spell slot requires no action, no bonus action. Now at 5th level, Sorceress Restoration allows you to gain sorcery points equal to your sorcerer level divided by 5 every time you take a short rest or roll initiative. Now remember that innate sorcery ability that you got at 1st level and how it lasts for a minute? But when you get to 7th level, during that minute, when you use innate sorcery, you can use 2 metamagic options on each spell you cast. So at 20th level, you get Arcane Apotheosis. So when your innate sorcery feature is active, during that minute, you can use 1 metamagic option on each of your turns without spending a sorcery point.
The Sorcerer finally delivers on being a badass spell blaster, and I'm here for it. So here for it.
Whew, that was fun. So let's take a look at the Sorcerer subclasses. We have Aberrant Sorcery and Clockwork Sorcery, which are straight out of Tosh's Cauldron of Everything. There's no real changes there. And Draconic Sorcery got tuned up a little bit, but it was already pretty solid. And now that the core class is much improved, Draconic Sorcery is going to work just fine. Wild Magic, however, we all knew it needed some help, and it got it. So Wild Magic and Tides of Chaos no longer depend on the DM. They have their own mechanics of how they work. The DM doesn't have to decide when your Wild Magic surge is going to happen. And that's the part that absolutely just needed to change. Some other changes: Bend Luck only costs 1 sorcery point now instead of 2, which might actually make it usable now. Spell Bombardment, the 18th level ability, gets replaced with Wild Bombardment. So instead of doing a little bit of extra damage on a dice roll, Wild Bombardment now lets you regain all your sorcery points or choose an effect from the Wild Magic Surge table. So just like the Sorcerer got more prepared spells, the Warlock gets more invocations. So you're getting 1 invocation at first level, 3 invocations at second level, and 5 invocations at 5th level. And the Warlock packs are now just invocations. So you don't have to pick a pact at all, or you can pick more than 1 pack. They're all mixed in with the invocations now, and you can mix and match them how you want. Now, one of the things I never liked about Warlock was the shortage of spell slots. Hopefully, with this increased number of invocations, you're not going to feel that pain point as much. But at second level, you also get the ability called Magical Cunning, which allows you to perform an esoteric rite for 1 minute, and at the end of that minute, you get half of your spell slots back rounded up. Now, while I never liked playing a Warlock, I always liked DMing for a player who was playing a Warlock. And that's because of the Patron. The Patron is such a great tool for answering questions about the campaign and keeping players engaged. And now the Warlock has an actual mechanic that allows them to talk to their Patron. Allows you to cast the Contact Other Plane spell, which allows you to ask 5 questions from an otherworldly being. This is great to have a built-in mechanic that encourages players to engage with the campaign setting and gives the DM an opportunity to communicate direction for the campaign or answer questions about the campaign via the Patron. Fantastic. Now, if you've seen the other 3 videos in this series, you know there's just not time to go into all the details on all these classes. So I'm hitting the highlights as we go to give you at least the flavor of the significant changes. So next we're going to look at the subclasses, and then I want to get into the invocations. So quickly, let's run through the Warlock subclasses. Pact of the Fiend was already solid. They just tuned it up a little bit, nothing dramatic. Archfey and Great Old One definitely needed the help, and they got it. The Archfey is now like this crazy teleporter. Great Old One now dishes out a bunch of psychic damage and can give advantage and disadvantage during combat. The one that's odd is Celestial, because they didn't really change it all that much from the appearance in Xanathar's Guide, and I don't think Celestial was ever that popular. Maybe they're hoping that changing the packs to invocations will help you better design a Celestial Warlock. I'm not sure why they didn't tune up the Celestial a little more. Now, again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to be able to go into all the different invocations, but I want to take a look at some of the common combos that we used to see before and focus on the 3 packs that we're most used to. So, of course, we're going to look at Pact of the Blade, Thirsting Blade, and Life Drinker. This was probably the most popular combo of any Warlock in the 2014 version of D&D, so that's why I wanted to take a look at it, and it looks nasty, like too good nasty. This is going to deal a whole lot of damage, and I think it might actually outshine the Fighter and Barbarian for the damage output. So if this is how it's going to be in the 2024 release, then the Warlock is going to be the ultimate melee glass cannon. It's going to deal damage better than most of the melee classes, but again, it's still a Warlock. It's not going to have the survivability that those martial classes have. Hence my glass cannon diagnosis. Now, when it comes to Pact of the Chain, we have to examine the Find Familiar spell. And there was a new Find Familiar spell in the playtest packet. However, it was all the way back in playtest number 4. So I would expect that playtest 4 version of Find Familiar to have some adjustments. Now, of course, Pact of the Chain allows you to choose an alternate form for your familiar. And the new version includes Imp, Pseudo-Dragon, Quasit, Skeleton, Slod, Tadpole, or Sprite. Now, Skeleton and Slod Tadpole are the new ones, and they seem a little strange, because Slod Tadpole is actually weaker than the regular Find Familiar form, and Skeleton is a medium creature that has hands and can wear armor. So I'm not sure what they're going for here, if they intentionally wanted a diversity of familiar options, or if this was part of the playtest process and they plan on adjusting and dialing things back. Another interesting thing is investment of the Chainmaster invocation allows you to order your familiar to attack with your bonus action, while the new version of Find Familiar allows you to order your familiar to attack with your reaction. So if both of these stay the way they are in the playtest, you're going to be able to give your familiar 2 attacks per turn, once with your bonus action and once with your reaction. I'm not sure if that's intended or if that was a redundancy in the playtest that will get addressed. Gaze of 2 Minds is an invocation that would be very useful with Pact of the Chain because it would allow you to use your familiar to cast spells through from a distance. I'm eager to see the final version of this and how versatile and effective the new Pact of the Chain combinations are going to be. Then we have Pact of the Tome, which gives you 3 cantrips and 2 first-level ritual spells, also gives you an additional first-level spell slot, and you can use the Tome as a spellcasting focus. This is definitely better than the 2014 version. So I think the Pact of the Tome invocation is going to pair nicely with other invocations like Mask of Many Faces, Misty Visions, and One with Shadows, all that give you the ability to cast more spells. And there's a new invocation, Lessons of the First Ones, which allows you to take a feat, which you could take the Magic Initiate upgrade, again getting another first level spell slot and 2 more cantrips. There's definitely a way to build a utility caster as a Warlock around the Pack of the Tome feature. So you know what? I might actually play a Warlock now. I like the new version of the Warlock, I love the new version of the Sorcerer, and the Mages just really sums up the whole playtest process. What they've done is taken the things that were working, and they kept those largely the same, and they took the things that needed work and they gave them that much needed work. Overall, I think we're going to get a really good version of the game when they all come out between September of this year and February of next year. I'm actually really happy that I did this review series, even though it was a ton of work, because I'm actually more excited for the new edition than I ever have been. I think it really is going to be good. I really do, and I'm getting excited about it. You tell me what you think in the comments below. As always, I'm Brad Wolf, and thanks again for watching the Dire Den, and I'll see you next time. In the meantime, you can see the rest of this series by clicking here, or check out one of my other new videos. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe because it definitely helps out the channel.